Hi, everyone. I would like to preface my talk with some relevant context. And first of all, we as a security team at Mediahuis view our colleagues to be our strongest assets. You also heard it in the previous talk, but often still in IT and in cybersecurity, we hear people say, oh yeah, the humans are the weakest link. If only they didn't click on that link, if only they used a strong password, if only they kept their machine up to date. And we see this differently. We think that our colleagues are our strongest assets, and it's our job as security people to facilitate them in doing their work securely. So, with every awareness program we run, we try to think about the what's in it for me from our colleagues' perspective. They have busy lives, they have stressful jobs. What do they have to gain by changing their behavior? And also, you might be wondering, why am I up here talking about passwords? We live in a world where single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, passwordless login, passkeys, they all exist. But there's still many companies out there that have their fair share of legacy systems. Those systems might not be ready for passkeys. They might not be ready for passwordless logon. They might not even be ready for multi-factor authentication or single sign-on. And even though we do enforce multi-factor on all our accounts, it can still be hacked, it can still be bypassed. So to us, passwords are still very much the keys to our digital front doors. And we have quite a vast and fragmented IT landscape. So our colleagues have quite a few different passwords for all those different systems. Now, some of you may have heard about Mediahuis, but those who haven't, I'll give a quick introduction. We are primarily a newspaper publisher, and we operate the entire life cycle of the newspaper. So we have journalists, editors, support staff, obviously, but also print and distribution. And we operate in 5 countries, 5 European countries. And you might know us from titles such as De Telegraaf and NRC in the Netherlands, Nieuwsblad and De Standaard in Belgium, and the Irish Independent in Ireland. So, who am I? I'm Nynke Damstra. I'm a TISO, or Technical Information Security Officer at Mediahuis. And I basically work on anything that is security related that has either attack or an awareness component. I don't do much of compliance and governance, and that's mainly a personal preference thing. Been with Mediahuis for a little over 6 years now. So I think that's enough about me. Let's dive into the fun stuff and start talking about passwords. I think everyone in this room has at the very least encountered and maybe even enforced these, in my opinion, ridiculous password rules. They consist of a very long list. A password should contain at least 8 characters. Maybe 12 if you're doing really well. No more than 20 because you'll break things. There should of course be letters in there, some of which should be capitalized. But wait, don't capitalize all of them. You have to include some numbers, special characters, obviously, and then you have to change it every 90 days. Oh, and by the way, you can't use anything you've used the previous 10 times. And we still have these rules on some of our systems, though those are getting fewer and fewer. But even on our Enter ID or Active Directory or whatever Microsoft calls it nowadays, we had these rules until quite recently, a couple of years ago. And when we wanted to change that, it took quite a lot of debate with our IT department to actually make this happen. And one of the issues when talking about passwords is with that notion of a word. It makes people think it's okay to go into the dictionary, pick a word, any random word, and use that as your password. You'll add, obviously, the numbers to it, the special characters, but that's generally what's done. And we should really be talking about passphrases or randomly generated passstrings. Those randomly generated passstrings are very strong. It is a bit unfortunate that they're not that easy to use. If you have to remember them, or if you ever type them in on anything that's not an actual computer, they're not great, and that basically led to where we are today with passwords. And the problem with starting to talk about passphrases is when you first start to do this, you get a lot of funny looks, and I know from experience. Because people will not know what you're talking about. The whole idea of a password is very much ingrained in our language. And like with anything in IT, there is a relevant XKCD. I think this one holds true. I'm not necessarily talking about the entropy calculations, and definitely not saying that you should use correct horse battery stable as your password or passphrase. That's probably one of the few that you shouldn't. But we have trained people to use passwords that are very hard to work with, but incredibly easy for a computer to crack. And as I said at the start of the presentation, we have a big IT landscape. Our colleagues have a lot of different passwords. And to help them remember all those passwords, we gave them a password manager. We believe that sustainable behavioral change only happens if it's really becoming something of your day-to-day life. So we gave them one to use at home as well. We went through all the what's in it for me's, and we thought this was really positive. We thought this would make our colleagues' lives a lot easier. And after rollout, hardly anyone was using it. Easier to remember, but I use the same password for everything. That's super easy. It can generate passwords for you, but I've used Welcome01 for years. It's fine. And by the way, why are you throwing yet another application at us? It sounds like so much work, and we really don't have time for it. And also, wasn't there a password manager that was hacked recently? How can we know that this one is secure? So, adoption of our password manager wasn't exactly thriving. And in hindsight, even if that hack never happened, I don't think it would have been that much higher. Because we gave our colleagues a solution to a problem they didn't know they had. And it takes quite a lot of time out of someone's already busy day to properly set up a password manager before you even benefit from it. And to take that half a day to set it up would mean that you need to see ahead what the benefit is for you. So a lot of people didn't. At the same time, a lot of our colleagues still had weak passwords. The passwords like the one you see on the screen behind me, like the ones I talked about earlier in the presentation. They complied with the policy at the time, but weren't exactly strong. Of course, we have an awareness program, so we did the generic, weak passwords are bad, guys, you should really use strong passwords kind of communications. And they helped a little. We saw some uptick in password manager usage. We saw some people change their passwords. But the effect was a lot smaller than we desired. And it makes sense, because we use those examples like the Welcome01 in those communications, but someone who has a different but equally weak password might think it doesn't apply to them. So they might think, oh yeah, Welcome01 exclamation mark, yeah, that's bad. But I use Welcome02 question mark, so I should be fine. So we felt the need to communicate to a specific colleague that they had a weak password and that they should change their password. We also didn't want to know their passwords. So we first had to determine what we consider to be a weak password. And you can have long debates on this, go many different ways, and I'm just going to tell you what we decided. To protect against brute force attacks, we upped the character minimum. We went from 12 to 19 characters. This is mainly if you're using fewer character sets, then you can still have a strong password with 19 characters. Another interesting one was for the dictionary attacks, and that's the one I'm going to talk about now. We basically used very common word lists that are available online, like the RockQ and stuff like that. We combined that with some scrapings of our websites because we have quite a lot of brand names and we wanted to include those at least. And we used readily available word rule sets that we did end up tweaking a little bit along the way. And the reason we chose this is because we wanted to capture the passwords that were easiest to crack. You can go really far in this, make it really complex, and people can use hardly any passwords anymore. Might not want to do that. We wanted to just make sure that should our hashes ever get stolen, that we have some time for people to change their passwords. Eventually, it's probably all gonna get cracked, but by that time, people should have changed their passwords and we should be good. So we mainly wanted to focus on those that were cracked in a couple of minutes, because between your hashes being stolen and having to get everyone to change their passwords, you need more time than a couple of minutes. For these tests, we use Hashcat, but you can use any password cracking tool, I reckon. And we have some custom scripting around it. So that is partly automation, because I'm lazy and it makes my life easier. And it's also to make sure that we can't see people's passwords. And at first, we only gathered statistics. So percentages of weak passwords and stuff like that. It wasn't until we got the okay from C-level, from each entity, workers' councils, if applicable in the country, and the legal departments of each country before we started actually communicating to colleagues that they had weak passwords. Sorry, just need a sip of water. And we made a very, very nice email explaining that people had a weak password and they needed to change it. We really wanted to avoid being IT telling people off, telling people what they were doing wrong. And in that email, we also included some info on our password manager. So stuff like, you have trouble coming up with strong passwords, you have trouble remembering all those passwords, use our password manager. And email looked a little bit like this. Checked everything, had everyone read over it, check if it was clear, check if it was friendly enough, everything like that. Send it to the colleagues that had a weak password. And a couple of minutes later, we received a reply from one of our colleagues who was, well, less than happy with us. We got called the company KGB among some other phrases that I don't feel comfortable repeating here. And that did encourage us to look at the email again, thinking, was it maybe too accusatory, or was it not clear that we could not see their actual passwords? So rewrote the entire email, checked it, and we also sent the colleague in question a very long explanation saying, this is exactly what we did to make sure that we can't see your password. They never replied to that email, and the next month they still had a weak password. And for a while this interaction really kind of bummed me out. But to be honest, you can't really do it perfect for everyone. There's always going to be people that are upset with you, especially if you start saying specifically you as an individual have a weak password. There are going to be some people that are going to be unhappy with you, and that's just how it is. It did help us to make that communication better, actually. It's fine that it's not perfect. It never will be, so just let go of that idea, basically. But do use that feedback you get. And to prove that it will never be perfect, that same exact email later on got called way too nice and voluntary, and why would anyone act on that, by one of our higher level managers. So take the feedback, learn from it, but don't get discouraged, because people are always going to be there's always going to be some people that are unhappy with you. And one of the nice things about doing this every month is we can track the usage of weak passwords over time. The very first time we did a test like this, it was in a pen test. They found the hashes, they cracked them, and almost 40% of people had a weak password. And we actually got that down to 0. The first email helped, but we did other things along the way as well. Because that first email we felt didn't sufficiently communicate the what's in it for me. Why would our colleagues take time out of their day to change their passwords? We also still had those mandatory every 90-day password changes still in effect at our company at the time. And we knew our colleagues found this very annoying. It was one of those things that IT enforces. It never happens at a time that's convenient. So it wasn't a popular measure by any means. We also knew that it doesn't necessarily help. Because humans are very predictable in their behavior and in their patterns. So generally, if you have a rule like this, it will result in changing the 1 to a 2, changing the 2 to a 3, etc. So we decided to leverage this. We had a company-wide meeting, and we announced our CEO announced that anyone using a sufficiently strong password would no longer have to change it every 90 days. That helped. Numbers dropped quite a lot by that point, but we were still not at 0. And from here, As I said, we operate in different countries. The approaches differ, and this is because the culture and the maturity of each entity is different. Also, each entity has a C-level and they have opinions, and we need to take those into account. So in one of the entities in the Netherlands and in Belgium, C-level actually talked to all the department heads, said like, look, there are people in your departments that have weak passwords. We want to do something about this. You get a list from security with who that is. Talk to them, make sure they change their passwords. Worked really well. Then Germany and Luxembourg, we had someone connected to the security team, but in the local operations actually sent people a message saying like, hey, you have a weak password. Can you please change it? We had one entity that chose to block accounts, only letting colleagues back in if they change their password. And I think most notable, and I think you see it on the graph as well, is Ireland. They started at the highest percentage, so the 40% from the earlier, not even there. They started at 75% weak passwords. This was due to what was common practice in all of our entities in IT when we started this. They used a base word with some numbers, and they only changed the numbers, so basically everyone had the same base word. Or when we first said that at some of our other entities, hey, this is not smart, they were like, oh yeah, we can change this, so it became summer, winter, etc., with the year and an exclamation mark. I can tell you all this because we no longer do this. It's also why you see the little uptick in the graphs for the Netherlands and Belgium. That's when we started including year and exclamation mark in our rule set, and those passwords got triggered. But Ireland also saw the steepest drop. And this was because when we first did the test, we reported to CEO, and the CEO said, this is unacceptable. I will not have this many weak passwords in my organization. And he actually took matters in his own hands, and he sent the whole company an email saying, look, there's plenty of you that have a weak password. I'm not blaming everyone for that, but you know now, so now you need to change it. You'll get an email from security. If you are using a weak password, please change your password if you get that email. And as you can see, that worked. So of all of these approaches, I think blocking was the most successful in getting direct results. But it was also the most controversial. First of all, because we are a newspaper company. Our entire thing is we need to get the papers on our customers' doormats or in the shops every single day. Anything that could hinder that process is a big no-go. But also from an awareness perspective, we're not a fan of that approach. And that is because you're forcing people to change their passwords at that inconvenient time. And generally that doesn't result in the strongest passwords. Of the other approaches, I think the one in Ireland where the CEO sent the email, very successful as well. And that is also because it fits local culture. We've had CEOs send emails at different entities for awareness activities as well, with concrete action, this is what you need to do. We always get results, but in Ireland the results were a lot bigger, better, than we get in some entities. I think both having department heads talk to their people in their teams and having local people talk to the people that have a weak password worked really well as well. And it's also because we sent the email from a generic email address, and people don't read their email in general, and definitely not if it's not from a personal email address. And the reason why we went with the one option in 2 entities and the other option in the other 2, has to do with the size of the entity and the amount of people that had a weak password. We have a relatively small security team, so I think if you have to call 10, 20 people, manageable. If you have to call 100, 200, 300, that's going to be a problem. So there we opted for that department head choice instead of contacting them ourselves. And it's really cool because we're either at 0 or very close to 0 for most of our entities. So I'm really happy with that. And we still continue to do this. And that is mainly because we have new people join the company. And even though we have that 19-character minimum, they could still set a weak password. So if that happens, we will know. We will send them 2 emails, one the first month, one the second month, if they show up. And after that, we just talk to the supervisor, say, look, this person needs to change their password. Okay, you see to it that they do that. We've also included the password info in our onboarding program, just to make everyone aware of, like, look, this is how Mediahuis views passwords, this is how you should deal with it. Just to make that clear from the start, basically. And what have we learned from this? Well, first of all, take maturity level into account. Don't start blocking accounts if you've never talked about weak passwords. It feels obvious, but it is very important. Also, take local culture into account. In some countries, talking to someone's supervisor might give someone a heart attack, whereas in other countries, it's like, yeah, it's fine. They talk to my boss, whatever. So do take that into account. You're never going to get it 100% perfect when it comes to awareness. It just isn't going to happen, and that's fine. Accept that. Learn from the feedback you get. So we've rewritten that email, I think, by now 5 or 10 times, making it a little better with each iteration. And finally, if you think, that's cool, I want to start cracking passwords at my company, I recommend it, it's fun. But also make sure you get buy-in from C-level, workers' councils if they're applicable, and if you, like us, operate in a couple of different countries, get buy-in from legal at each country. The laws differ per country, so it sometimes matters if you can do this or not. It's not always allowed. So that was what we learned from it, and since I'm a lover of bad jokes, bad joke for you at the end.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I am curious though. So if I step into my CEO's office tomorrow and I say, Stephen, dude, shall we do this? Do you think it will work like that? Or do you have a good idea how I can ask him?
So what we did is we had a plan with how are we going to make sure we can't see people's passwords.
Yeah.
Explain that. Very simple, very non-technical. I think that is the most helpful. I think if you just say like, oh yeah, we're going to go into Active Directory and just scroll through the passwords or something, they should be hashed anyway, but then yeah, you're going to get a no. But if you explain like these are the risks, they like when you talk about risks.
Good, yeah, and numbers.
And numbers. It helped in our case as well that we already had it done in a pen test. So we said, oh, these are the numbers. This is not good. We want to tackle this a bit more structurally.
Make it better.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay, are there people who have any questions? 1, 2... Yep.
Sorry, I'm just going to grab some more water.
Hi, thanks for your talk. You say that there's no longer a policy to change your password after 90 days. Is it no longer mandatory to change it ever, or is it a longer period?
No, it's no longer every 90 days. It's not necessarily a longer period. We've said when IT or security asks you to change your password, you have to change it. Yeah. And you have to change it straight away. Mm-hmm. In the other case, you don't have to change it. Okay. That is for the accounts that our colleagues use. It's different for admin accounts or service accounts. Okay. We do have mandatory changes there.
Okay, thanks.
Very cool presentation. Something caught my attention on one of the slides where you had a table that showed from 2018 and 2025. And what I noticed was that not only was the percentage going from 40% to 0%, but the number of accounts also went down. And I'm curious, was it the people with poor passwords that left the company?
No, we didn't fire people over having a weak password. We believe security should be a positive message. So firing someone because they're using a weak password when generally, let's be honest, they're just busy. They have to get something to get into their account. That would not be our preferred practice. No.
Yeah, question here. I completely understand when asking this question, it depends on the maturity of the organization, the kind of business, risk appetite, etc., etc. But I'm just curious to know your opinion and thoughts about it, right? So we are in a debate about passkeys being secure or not in the post-quantum world because of post-quantum cryptography. So how do you see that you have put so much effort on this now, and passwords are not safe anymore? They say 3 to 4 years that post-quantum cryptography is going to become the reality. Then how do you see your approach, or what is on your roadmap? Just your thoughts, basically.
Well, just disclaimer, I'm by no means at all a quantum expert. But yeah, we do have to move away from passwords eventually. It's just, it takes quite a lot of effort to get those changes across. Also, as far as I understand it, quantum is mainly going to be an issue for asymmetric cryptography, but that might just be me. Yeah. So in that case, passwords are stored by hashes, which is different, but hashes computing power has been getting stronger and stronger, so hashes are more and more easy to crack. So basically, what we are doing is we buy ourselves time. Should our hashes ever get stolen, we want enough time to make sure that people can change their passwords. So it's not necessarily about getting an unhackable password, but more about getting to a point where if anything happens, we have time to fix it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. We have so many tools, all of us, multiple tools, and everything is integrated as SSO. We have MFA. At the end, we need to also keep all these password, apart from SSO password, multiple in safe password manager or something. In your company, did you also enforce any policies around that LastPass or secret manager, whatever tool you guys using?
So we do have a password manager that people can use, but we don't believe in making that mandatory. And that is, if you say you have to use the password manager, it will result in people just logging in once a month to make sure that they don't get a stern talking to from their boss. But it doesn't actually mean that they integrate it into their day-to-day life. So we try to convince them with onboarding sessions where we take an hour to help them actually set up the password manager. Because once they're set up with it, I think most people are comfortable with it and like it. It's just that the setup is quite a hassle. So try to help them through that and make it as easy as possible. But we don't make it mandatory.
Any other questions? All the way in the back.
Thank you. Our organization is also going through a password revamp, so this was great. Where did 19 characters come from? I know industry standard is currently 15. Was that something internally that you guys found to be a good number? Just would love your insight on that.
The graphs you see online with if you have X amount of character sets and X amount of characters, it takes X amount of time to crack your passwords. We said, what if we reduce that to 1 character set, and what would still be enough characters to have a password that's relatively robust against brute forcing? And that's how we came to 19.
All right. So I heard you say using passwords, but did you even think about multi-factor authentications?
We have multi-factor.
Okay.
Absolutely. But multi-factor can be bypassed. We've seen multi-factor fatigue attacks happening. So, yes, multi-factor, it absolutely helps. I'm not against it. Absolutely not. I think it's a great idea. But when your passwords are leaked, then it's easier to start attacking multi-factor. So we think passwords need to be good and multi-factor needs to be enabled both.
So, great presentation and such a relevant topic. I think actually it starts at home in your own personal life. A lot of people still have the 1, 2, 3 passwords, right? So what is your take on the automated passwords, as, for example, suggested by Apple or Google or?
We recommend the ones by the password manager that we offer. The one, I think at home use, the one by Apple is fine. And I think the one in browser I struggle a bit with. And that is because there's attack vectors on browsers that are a bit bigger. Also, a password manager that works on all your devices, in general, for non-IT people, works better than having a password manager that only works in your specific browser if you're logged in and otherwise you don't have access to your passwords. And for example, Chrome, the password manager, you use your Google account for quite a lot of different things. So if you log into YouTube while you're on holiday, you forget to log out. That's already a problem. So that's why we say use the password manager we provide, or if someone really wants to use a different password manager that's secure, then that's fine. But not the one in the browser.
Thank you. You had the most questions today. Everybody's so interested in this topic. Yes, give a hand of applause. Here you go. Thank you so much.
Thank
you did a great job.